Welcome to Thorin's YouTube channel, the one thing Fnatic TSM and T1 fans can all agree on.
Now, I'm not talking about Jojo's bizarre adventure when I say that despite some really weird things in the circumstances around the main character's journey, it's been surprisingly compelling and actually a lot better than you'd think, really. Kind of a base take there. Obviously, if you want to support this channel, you can get some Gamersubs 10% off with the code Thorin, THORIN, at gamersubs.gg. I recommend the lemonade flavour, or how about cherry limesicle? By the way, did you know you're a League of Legends fan? Do you want to get tips and predictions and previews? I'm going to be doing some exclusive content on social media. Check out my pinned tweet around MSI or my link tree. Now, Jojopyun being a great player potentially in this era is not something that you can take lightly if you're an NA fan in terms of NA talent. The LCS has historically been dominated by players who didn't originally hail from NA. Sure, you have Doublelift as the big outlier with the most trophies, but then you've got Bjergsen and Jensen are the true GOAT contenders, are the ones who pretty much ran the league and everyone built around them. Then you had Core JJ came in with his exceptional play, but he was already a world champion as well as a Korean player before he even got there. Impact and Someday have pretty much dwarfed the longevity of any of the NA top laners. By the time you get down to the other greats that are from NA, like Smithy, Meteos, obviously the most criminally underrated ones, Pobelter, you've already gotten down the ladder quite a lot. And also, those often weren't the piece within their teams, were they? So when a true NA talent emerges and can be built around, it's cause for celebration, whether you're from LCS or not. And Jojopyun is that talent. Now, what's funny is, he kind of actually went under the radar initially, despite all the silly stories about, like, oh, he doesn't know, he comes from Fortnite or whatever, he doesn't understand the game, or like he doesn't know that, like, what do you call it, GP barrels crit, etc. Those are fun stories, but actually he was kind of obscured by the rise of Danny, because Danny came first. If people don't remember, Danny was on EG a split before Jojo, and then basically they actually band-aided him early on, but you could see he had some talent. And then when Jojo came in, they kind of band-aided him. I mean, he was playing with Inspired. They just kind of made it so like it was easy to lane. He could just get through the game, because that team was all about getting Danny through his weirdly like whatever laning phase, where he had this like real special talent in team fights. So initially it was the rise of Danny, and Jojopyun was kind of the sidekick. But obviously Danny is gone, isn't he? So actually, now that Danny's gone, Jojo stands alone. He doesn't even play with those players anymore. And he's the best mid laner in the LCS. Like, I love my boy Jensen. He's always able to roll it back. APA sort of came on strong in the playoffs. The best mid laner is Jojo. Come on, especially if you just look at things like laning and overall skill. By the way, if it wasn't for the fact like his team has macro issues, I'd say he's arguably the best player in the LCS, which is no small feat. So his skills are his primary strength. They are very legit. You can see why this guy was picked up. He is sort of a prodigy. Like, he is a Doublelift-esque figure in terms of mechanics and what he can do in the game, especially for how little time he's actually had, how little experience he's had. People don't know. Over in Counter-Strike, we have a guy called Monacy who only came up a couple of years ago. But if you don't know, guys, he just recently posted a screenshot where he has 20,000 hours in Counter-Strike, which is like an average of like 4 hours a day for 14 years or something. Like, that guy already played a lot of Counter-Strike. This guy, Jojopyun, did not play League of Legends before. He doesn't have a decade in the game, and it's just now that he's old enough, he's able to play. He's also very young also, despite all that he's accomplished. His skills are very legit. I've seen all the great players. This guy has it. Whatever it is, that special factor beyond just talent, that ability that you merge with the game, you have a sense for when to do stuff. Your skills aren't just like the equivalent of putting the ball between your legs in basketball. You can actually make shots. You can do complicated moves that normally are more advanced player moves. Crucially for me, his attitude is actually one thing I'm very impressed by. Even though the banter stuff, kind of like Doublelift in the early days, draws people aside and they make him think, oh, he's arrogant. Well, no, I actually think he seems driven, which is cool. He knows that he's still young in his career, but he's trying to get better and better and better. He has a confidence to take on the best players and people better than him. And even though he's memeing when he implies that he's going to clap Faker, etc., I actually think he has a true confidence that he can get to the level to do that in those games. That's quite refreshing, actually. Normally, it's one thing I've always complained about on shows. I'm sick and tired of NA players where they're so beaten down before they even get to the international tournament, or from the first 2 weeks of boot camp getting their shit pushed in by some like LCK who aren't even in the tournament, that they never even go into those games really think they can, when they think they need a perfect draft and they need the perfect lane advantage and the perfect team fight. It's like, no, they don't actually have the balls to believe you can just mix it up. Now, what's funny is APA is kind of aping that right now, but he does not. He just has like too little experience, and he's just too raw. And he doesn't, quite frankly, have the same talent level, in my opinion, Jojopyun does. Now, the one thing I do think is lacking, though, in Jojopyun's game, it's obvious, it's the main thing Cloud9 lacks, is the cerebral side of the game. Like, it's clear that he doesn't have a great sense of macro concepts, shot calling, doesn't particularly necessarily know how to call around himself even, which I do think is necessary if you want to be a truly great carry player in the League of Legends world, especially in the LCS, by the way. You've got to be able to get people... Like, I might not think Doublelift's a good overall shot caller, but he definitely knew how to call when he had a lead, he had items, and when he wanted to fight. That is something you need to do. You have to be able to call your own shot as much as shot call, if you get the reference to something like basketball. So at the moment, sometimes it does seem like in the later part of the game, he can't necessarily create his own shot, as it were. That's why obviously you'd want to put him with an amazing jungler again, like a carry jungler, or an amazing support that's kind of a brain/vision support. It doesn't have to be a core JJ. Maybe it could be a Hui or something like that. But that part can develop. I mean, look, I tend not to try and use the greatest players of all time as like reference points because they tend to be outliers. But if you look on a different scale, think of the career of Chovy over in the LCK. He was also like a breakout, like prodigy player, mega skills, but he lacked a lot of macro knowledge, didn't seem to communicate with his teammates, didn't seem to have any shot calling understanding, had kind of a one-dimensional game for a few years. But you see how he's developed from playing with junglers and supports who have the shot calling and the brains and working with coaches and getting international experience. And now he's basically the next Bonjour, isn't he? He's just the fucking god of League of Legends right now. Looks almost unbeatable. Think about this. Jojopyun is only in his third year at LCS now. He just finished his 5th split. He already has international experience, like real international experience. He's been to MSI and played T1 and RNG. He's been to Worlds and played amazing Chinese and Korean teams. This guy's been to the big tournaments. Now, yeah, missing MSI this season is pretty rough because his team was supposed to be a favourite to win the split. Similarly, not winning more championships, that's kind of rough. He hasn't been in as many finals as you probably would have hoped. I mean, yes, there was the whole Danny situation that probably cost them a final, quite frankly, but we can all understand extenuating circumstances there. For me, the most important factor of Jojopyun isn't even the talent, isn't even the potential. It's how bright the future is. Like, you look at Cloud9, they almost did everything wrong with the cerebral side of the game, hence why they had to fire their coach. And look, they haven't recruited a shot caller, but they've got more skill in the lineup. Like, you could easily mix this team up, put 1 or 2 different players in. I could see someone like Jojopyun not only being an MVP player, but just winning more championships, going to NA and actually having international tournaments rather, and having a chance to win those BO1s and maybe do something in a series. That would be kind of cool, right? So he's already a champion of the LCS. Now, admittedly, he maybe wasn't the best player when that happened. I think people like Inspired and Danny were much more crucial. Put him, though, like I say, with a core JJS talent at support, or just put him with Inspired again at jungle, and this guy will blossom. Whether he becomes a cerebral player or not, at that point, he'll have the person to sort of handle him. And hopefully, over time, you learn the beats and the rhythms, and your intuitive sense comes online. You can do some of the shot calling yourself, a la Chovy. Even this Cloud9, by the way, I mean, let's face it, with the Thanatos guys, it's probably going to be an extremely skilled team that can win from all lanes. So they have a chance to just brute force it and either win the LCS or go to Worlds. So hopefully, he's going to be right back on track again to get more of that valuable experience, to get more accomplishments, to build his resume and his legacy. Because if you look specifically at the mid lane, I mean, I already pointed out at the beginning, it's obviously completely dominated by Jensen and Bjergsen. The joke is, like, Jensen's still right now in position to win championships and add more and go to more international tournaments. So already those other names just melt into history and become irrelevant, don't they? Like, the most obvious one I referenced earlier is Paul Belter. Mad underrated, but then again, aside from a few domestic finals, his problem was he wasn't usually the main carry, was he? And he wasn't the guy where, if you put him in the international play, he'd kind of do anything. That was where he kind of faltered. High, I always thought was overrated because he was a brilliant shot caller. Even then, he wasn't the god shot caller. He was just a very good shot caller with the right teammates. But obviously, as an individual player, he was very overrated and was never going to match up to the fakers and the cools of the world in his era. AP is just too raw, hasn't got the champion pool yet. Let's see, he's still developing, he's still young in the game. Big Fat LP a long time ago, if we go to season 1, was the best player in the world in theory, but fell off quite hard each season onwards because he just didn't have the professionalism, and he was kind of a guy who seemed a bit checked out in some ways. You had people at one point in time like Reggie and Skara who could mix it up and do things internationally, still not on the level of the European mids, the Alexiches, the Expekes, Froggans, etc. that were dominant over there. I think at this point in time, you have to acknowledge, like, there aren't that many real NA talents come along. Even the ones that are good, like a Vulcan, they don't quite hit the high. Like, they're never a Mickey X level player, are they? This guy actually has the talent where, put it this way, if you put him in a European team and you give him the right coaches and the right jungle and support, I think this guy could be like the third best mid in the LEC. Like, he's a very legit talent for me, so don't overlook him. I know people overhyped him early, and then you looked at how they played and how Peter Dunn designed the game and what Inspired did and then what they did in Lytton. Like, yeah, that was overhyped. Now he's not overhyped. If anything, because Cloud9 has failed, it wasn't really his fault, people are going to look at that series and go, oh, he got no kills, he's a fucking bomb, I guess he was just overhyped, he's washed now. Like, he's not close to washed. This guy's about to potentially become something quite special, maybe a Doublelift of the mid lane. By the way, as well as obviously checking out the tips and preview content I'm going to have on my social media, why not buy some GamerSups and support me? 10% off, code Thorin, THORIN, at gamersups.gg. In this esports world, it can seem like everyone's against you, but I've always got the Skrilluminati, my Patreon community, riding with me, and it is thanks to the support of the following people, this video and all of them on my channel are made possible. Matt, Pugnatio, Rajcula, Ahmed Hadjou, Frisky, Tosh, Jensen Goh, Animosity, Thorin, Tobias Bernasconi. If you've ever watched my videos, you know now I'm going to give a massive shout out to Jerky's Minion, the main man. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? You want teasers? Find out who the upcoming interview guests are. Maybe you want to ask me a question. I tend to answer them at length in my video AMA. Do you want to take part in one of those dinner discussions where we talk about what you're interested in esports? Well, if any of these perks or more appeal to you, put your money where your mouth is. Join the Skrilluminati today, where in the description box below is a Patreon link.